Chapter 141, Distributing Supplies, 2. Thinking about Linen City's situation in the next 3 months, Jin Zuyin said, Zhang Yuan, go gather the survivors. We will divide the supplies among them and let them leave. Captain, even if we divide the supplies, there will still be a lot left, Zhang Yuan said. It's okay, just go and gather the survivors. After we finish here, we will check the rest of the factories. This factory district is no longer safe. We should inform the survivors and let them leave as soon as possible, Jin Zuyin said solemnly. Everyone thought about the zombie horde from yesterday and understood the hidden danger. In fact, the number of zombies shouldn't have been that high. Most of the zombies they killed yesterday were survivors who had been wounded and mutated. Rather than leaving the hidden danger hanging over their heads, it was better to clear the zombies and let the survivors go to the government's temporary camp. Reaching this conclusion, Zhang Yuan nodded and said, understood. After they left, Jin Zuyin looked at Zhao Lijai and said, Zhai, can you take all the supplies? Zhao Lijai nodded and said, no problem. While she collected the rice, Zhang Yuan and his team went to the dormitory. Under Qin Luzi's laid, they found the survivors' hiding place. Wen Kai and Wen Mo created a metal tower and let Zhang Yuan stand on it. At a height of 3 meters, the survivors hiding in the dormitory rooms could see him clearly. He cupped his hands around his mouth and said, Everyone, the zombies have been killed. You can come out and leave now. We will give you food and water so you can go to the survivor camp. After he said this, there was only silence. 5 minutes later, a window opened and a middle-aged man asked, Who are you? Why should we believe you? Zhang Yuan looked at him and replied, We are just a mercenary team. You can choose not to believe me, but this is your only chance to survive. We will only wait for 15 minutes. When the time is up, we will leave. Whether you listen to us or not is up to you. The moment Zhang Yuan finished speaking, Wen Mo raised his hand and controlled the metal tower, slowly changing its shape. Zhang Yuan jumped down when the tower was 1 meter above the ground. As soon as he left, Wen Mo clenched his fists, and the metal tower turned into a lump of metal. With a movement of his hands, the metal lump transformed into countless metal bullets. When he finished, Feng Yuan quickly stored the metal bullets in his space, leaving none behind. The survivors were surprised to see them controlling metal and making it disappear. Some of them knew that there were people with superpowers. After all, some people who left yesterday had superpowers. But after they left, they heard the roars of zombies and their screams. Everyone saw how they were torn apart by the zombies and eaten alive. Feeling scared, no one dared to leave the dormitory anymore. After a long time, they had finally seen a group of people coming to lure them out. While the survivors were full of suspicion, Zhang Yuan checked his watch. 7 minutes had passed, and no one had come out yet. When he thought that no one would believe him, he saw a group of people coming out. Seeing their chapped lips, he said, Xirokai, give them some water and biscuits. Xirokai nodded and took out a box of mineral water and a box of biscuits from his space. Due to the zombie horde, he hadn't had the chance to give the supplies to the Eagle team. Now, he could give them to the survivors. The moment they saw the water, they rushed over and said, Please give me some water. Before they could reach Xirokai, an earth wall appeared out of nowhere and blocked them. Zhang Yuan looked at them and said, Get in line or you won't get any. Everyone was hungry and thirsty, so they got in line obediently. Seeing that they were no longer pushing and rushing, Zhang Yuan waved his hand, and the earth wall disappeared. Xirokai handed 2 bottles of water and a pack of biscuits to each of them. The moment the survivors in the building saw this, they no longer doubted Zhang Yuan's words and came out one after another. When the 15-minute time limit was up, Zhang Yuan said, We are leaving. With that, he turned and left the dormitory area, walking back to the warehouse. Those who were still hiding panicked when they saw them leaving and quickly came out. Unfortunately, by the time they left the buildings, Zhang Yuan and his team were no longer there. Fearing that they would be killed by zombies, the survivors could only return to the building and continue hiding. When Zhang Yuan returned with the survivors, Zhao Lijai had already finished collecting all the rice in the warehouse. Seeing the number of survivors, Jin Zuyin knew that there were still people who refused to come out. Since the survivors didn't believe them, there was nothing they could do. Captain, these are the survivors hiding in this factory. There are some still hiding and refusing to come out, Qin Luzi reported. Since they are unwilling to leave, then let them be. Xirokai, give them enough supplies for a week and let them leave, Jin Zuyin said. Hearing this, the survivors finally smiled and thanked them. Before they left, the Wen brothers gave them a dagger for protection and told them to go to Jiangning City. After the survivors left, Jin Zuyan and his team went to the next factory. Maybe due to the sound of their fighting yesterday attracting the zombies, when they arrived at the factory, they saw that the gate was broken. Instead of coming out of the armored vehicles, they drove into the factory. Chapter 142, Exchanging Supplies. Sitting in the leading car, Qin Luzi said, "Captain, there are no zombies in the area." Jin Zuyan nodded and asked, "Can you find the warehouse area?" Qin Luzi checked the map in his mind and said, "There is a huge building 100 meters to the right." Shen Jinj drove the car in the direction pointed out by Qin Luzi and saw a cafeteria. As they got closer to the building, Qin Luzi frowned and said, "Captain, there are people inside, around 30 to 40. Hearing this, Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "Let's go check on them." While they got out of the armored cars, the people inside saw them through the window, and one of them quickly ran to the second floor to report. "Brother Zai, a group of people is coming." On the second floor, a big table was placed in the center where several people were having a discussion. When they heard the report, they turned to look at the man in surprise. It had been more than a week since the zombies appeared, and they were running out of food. At this moment, they were discussing their plan to leave the factory and find supplies. "How many people?" Zai Changqian asked. 11 people, but they are driving military vehicles. "Brother Zai, they might be soldiers sent by the government to rescue us," the man who reported said, joy in his tone. Unlike the man, Zai Changqian frowned when he heard this. He looked at the people sitting around the table and asked, "What do you guys think?" "Brother Zai, I think they came for another purpose," a young man said. "Brother, we should meet them first before deciding our next move," a young woman said. Zai Changqian thought for a moment and said, "Let's go see who they are and what they want." After saying that, he turned and descended the stairs. When they came out, they saw a group of men chatting while a woman was eating duck feet, lost in thought. Zai Changqian glanced at the armored cars and then at the group. Although the vehicles were indeed military, this group wasn't wearing any military gear, but judging from their physiques and demeanor, they were clearly people who had fought many battles. Reaching this conclusion, he softened his sharp gaze and asked with a smile, "Hello, comrade. I wonder what your purpose is for coming here." Hearing his words, Zhang Yuan smiled and said, "Comrade, we came looking for supplies and didn't know that you and your group had already taken this area." When everyone heard his words, they looked at them in confusion. "Comrade, this factory is a daily necessities factory. You can find anything but food and water here," Zai Changqian said. When Zhao Lijai heard that this place had daily necessities, she tugged at Jin Zuyan's sleeve and said, "Brother Yan, let's get some shampoo and soap. We also need toilet paper, tents, and some tools." Seeing her interest, Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "Okay." Since his Aitg wanted the items, they would get some. He walked towards Zai Changqian and stopped 5 meters away from him. Qin Luzi had already told him that there were a total of 7 ability users in this group. Although the number wasn't large, it was more than enough for them to survive in the early days of the apocalypse. "Are you sure there is no food or water in this place?" he asked. Zai Changqian nodded and replied, "The only place where we could get food was the cafeteria, but we have used up the supplies. At this moment, we are planning to go to the neighboring food factory to find more." "You don't have to go, the supplies have already been taken by the soldiers." When they heard his words, they were taken aback. One of them asked, "Comrade, are you saying the soldiers came here before?" Jin Zuyan nodded and Zairo Kai asked in return, "Brother, you didn't hear the commotion yesterday. For some unknown reason, a group of survivors attracted a large number of zombies. The soldiers were forced to leave with the survivors." The moment they heard this, despair flashed in their eyes. If the soldiers had already come to this area before, they wouldn't return. That meant they could only rely on themselves now. "Brother Zai, what should we do now?" Zai Changqian looked at Jin Zuyan and his group for a moment before asking, "Comrade, how do you know what happened yesterday?" "It was my team who killed the zombies," Jin Zuyan replied casually. As soon as they heard this, their eyes widened in surprise. They had fought against zombies before. While it was still possible to kill them, it wasn't as easy as it had been before the rain. They had heard the sounds of fighting lasting for hours yesterday. This group only had 11 people, How could they have survived if they really fought against a horde of zombies? Noticing their disbelief, Jin Zuyin didn't bother explaining and said, "We need the factory district's map. Do you have it?" Zai Changqian didn't answer and asked instead, "What do you need the map for?" "We will exchange the map for supplies." Hearing his words, Zai Changqian and his group took several steps back. These people had shown up suddenly and wanted the map. They must be planning something. They couldn't be trusted. "Zyro Kai, take out a week's worth of supplies for 50 people, Jin Zuyin said. Receiving the order, Zyro Kai stepped forward, and with a wave of his hand, piles of food and boxes of mineral water appeared out of thin air. "Hand over the map and you can take the supplies," Jin Zuyin said. Looking at the pile of supplies, Zai Changqian hesitated. A young woman leaned closer and said, "Brother, just give them the map. With these supplies we can leave this place and find more later." After listening to his sister's words, he looked at his team and saw them nodding. Since everyone agreed, he had no reason to refuse. He took a map from his pocket and handed it to Jin Zuyin. Chapter 143, Sunflower. After getting the map, Jin Zuyin turned to his team and said, "Let's go." Not long after they left, Zai Changqian said, "Wanyu, keep the supplies." "Yes, brother." Zai Wanyu touched the boxes and stored them in her space. Her space was only 30 square meters, but it was enough to store supplies that could last them a month. These supplies took up only a small portion of the space. With the supplies, Zai Changqian and his team packed up and left the factory. They had no specific destination in mind, so they decided to go to the nearby city, Yunshan City. Meanwhile, the Phantom team went to the warehouse area. With the map, they were able to get a rough idea of the factories in the district. Besides this daily necessities factory, there was a solar panel factory, a pharmaceutical factory, and a military ration factory. When Zhao Lijai and Jin Zuyin saw the factory list, their eyes flashed with joy. In their previous life, one of the reasons why the government base had sent so many teams to clear Linen City was because of these factories. After the apocalypse, the power needed for base operations was limited, so most bases would pay a high price for solar panels. Although they could get solar panels from hotels or big companies, the number was far from enough for the entire base's consumption. So, the solar panel factory was one of their main targets. As for the pharmaceutical and military ration factories, the reason was none other than the food and medicine shortages. While the mission rewards were high, most teams were wiped out due to the high-level zombies in the factory district. Now, they could eliminate the zombies and take the supplies away. This way, the government wouldn't have to send so many people to their deaths to get the supplies, and they could earn money. Reaching this conclusion, Jin Zuyin said, "After we finish cleaning up this factory, we will go to these 3 factories first." Looking at the red circles drawn on the map, everyone nodded, understood. When they reached the warehouse area, everyone got out of the cars. Jin Zuyin walked toward Zyro Kai and Feng Yun, handed them a folder and said, "Zyro Kai, Feng Yun, both of you get the things on the list. If you have any questions, ask Zhang Yuan." "Yes, Captain." Then he looked at the rest of the soldiers and said, "The rest of you follow Old Chin and check the perimeter." "Yes, Captain." After signing the tasks, he turned and saw Zhao Lijai looking around. Feeling curious, he walked over and asked, "Zhai, what's wrong?" Pointing to a shrub, Zhao Lijai said, "Brother Yan, don't you think the area around that shrub is too clean?" The moment he heard her words, he frowned and looked in the direction she was pointing. Compared to the other areas, which were covered in blood, dust, and rotten flesh, the space around that shrub was indeed too clean. "Zhai, wait here," he said before walking toward the shrub. As he got closer, his body tensed as if there was a hidden danger that could threaten his life. When he was 2 meters away, Zhao Lijai suddenly shouted, "Brother Yan, be careful." Whoosh crack! A thick vine shot out from the shrub, slicing through the air, aiming for Jin Zuyin's head. Thanks to Zhao Lijai's warning, Jin Zuyin managed to dodge the attack. The vine was only an inch away from his throat when he jumped back. As he landed, the vine retreated as fast as it had struck. Zhao Lijai rushed over and asked, "Brother Yan, are you hurt?" Jin Zuyin shook his head and replied, "I'm fine." He opened his palm and a black flame floated above it. With a flick of his wrist, the black flame shot toward the shrub, igniting upon contact. While the fire burned, he felt something absorbing his energy and frowned. He waved his hand and extinguished the fire. Seeing the scene in front of them, Zhao Lijai's eyes widened in surprise. In front of them, a small plant swayed in the wind, standing in the center of burned soil and white ashes. She looked closer at the plant and said, "Brother Yan, this plant looks like a sunflower." Although it had been years since she had read her college books, she still recognized common plants. From its vibrant color, the sunflower was clearly a mutated plant, but not a zombie plant. "Captain, the surrounding area is clear." As soon as they heard Zhou Huajian's voice, the small plant, which had been swaying slightly, suddenly shot out a needle-like vine toward him. "Stab!" Before they could react, the vine stabbed Zhou Huajian's wrist. Feeling a sharp pain, Zhou Huajian let out a grunt. The next moment, the small plant flew toward him and attached itself to his wrist. Seeing the strange plant, his heart turned cold, and he frantically tried to peel it off. Zhao Lijai quickly pulled out her dagger and rushed over, intending to cut off the plant. As if sensing her intention, the small plant shrank at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few seconds, it had turned into a tiny dot and burrowed into Zhou Huajian's vein. The moment the plant entered his bloodstream, Zhou Huajian felt a burning pain spread through his body. Ugh! He collapsed to the ground, clutching his wrist. The wound from the vine had already closed, and aside from a small bulge moving along his vein, there was no visible sign of anything unusual. Jin Zuyan's eyes flashed as he grabbed his comrade's arm and sent his energy into his body, attempting to expel the plant. Unexpectedly, the moment his energy entered Zhou Huajian's body, it was absorbed by the small bulge. However, instead of growing larger, the bulge shrank smaller and smaller until it was no longer visible. "Brother Yan, what's going on?" Zhao Lijai asked, a hint of panic in her voice. Chapter 144, Nail Gun. Jin Zuyan focused his mind and used his energy to search for the plant. But aside from a green-colored energy and his own black energy, there was nothing else in Zhou Huajian's body. Fearing he might harm him instead, Jin Zuyan could only retract his energy and shake his head. "I don't know." While the two of them were baffled and worried, Zhou Huajian lost consciousness. At that moment, a small dot of light green energy swam through his veins, slowly making its way to his brain. The moment it entered, the energy dissolved and merged with the dark green energy swirling inside. The merging process took less than 5 minutes. When the energy fully merged, a small sunflower popped out from Zhou Huajian's head. While he remained unaware of this, Zhao Lijai and the Phantom team were shocked. Due to Zhou Huajian's condition, they decided to postpone their schedule and check on him first. They planned to carry him to the car and wait for him to wake up, but before they could move him, they saw a small sunflower growing on top of his head. Will Brother Huajian become a plant?" Xirokai asked in disbelief. Zhao Lijai looked thoughtfully at the small sunflower. If she remembered correctly, this sunflower was the mutated plant that had killed numerous mercenaries in her previous life, one of the overlords of Linen's zombie city. It had become an overlord due to its high regeneration ability, powerful attacks, and most terrifying of all, its ability to absorb others' energy and turn it into its own. By the 4th year of the apocalypse, it had already reached level 6. Now, seeing the overlord swaying atop Zhou Huajian's head cutely, she felt conflicted. Her rebirth had changed too many things, both the ones she actively altered and those indirectly affected by her actions. As she stared at the sunflower, an idea flashed through her mind. She reached out and created a ball of water. The moment the sunflower noticed the water, it stretched out its leaves. Using its small leaves, it hugged the water ball and dipped its flower head into it. As soon as the sunflower finished drinking, Zhou Huajian frowned and slowly opened his eyes. The sunflower bent its stalk to look at his face. Seeing that he had awakened, it disappeared into his head and reappeared on his shoulder. When Zhou Huajian regained his senses, he noticed his team looking at him with complicated expressions. He pushed himself up and asked hoarsely, "What's wrong with me?" Xirokai pointed at his shoulder and said, "Brother Huajian, you seem to have become a potted plant." Hearing this, Zhou Huajian frowned and asked, "What nonsense are you talking about?" "I'm not saying nonsense, you have a sunflower on your shoulder," Xirokai replied. Turning his head, Zhou Huajian's gaze landed on the small sunflower on his shoulder. Lowering his eyes, he realized that the sunflower was growing out of his body. The moment this realization hit him, a chill ran down his spine. He reached out, grabbed the sunflower, and yanked it off his shoulder. "Wait a moment." Before Zhao Lijai could finish speaking, Zhou Huajian had already pulled at the sunflower and immediately clutched his head. The moment he pulled it, he felt an excruciating ripping pain on his head, as if his brain were being torn apart. The pain gradually subsided after he let go of the sunflower, and he let out a sigh of relief. Turning his head, he no longer saw the sunflower. He checked his body but found nothing. Thinking he had successfully removed the plant, he felt relieved. Unbeknownst to him, the sunflower had transformed into a small green dot and hidden inside his body. Since its master seemed to hate it, it wouldn't reveal itself unless necessary. While everyone else was feeling relieved, only Jin Zuyin and Zhao Lijai knew this matter wasn't so simple. But since they have no information about this situation, they decided to observe the situation first. "Captain, I'm fine now," Zhou Huajian said. Jin Zuyin nodded and said, "Let's go get the supplies." At his words, everyone headed to the warehouse to help Xiao Kai and Feng Yun retrieve the listed supplies. There were a total of 6 warehouses in the area. After collecting supplies from one, they moved on to the next. Once the team had taken what they needed, Zhao Lijai entered alone and took the rest. In this factory, she found cleaning supplies such as disinfectant wipes, microfiber towels, multipurpose cleaners, vacuums, buckets, trash bins, and other items. There were also kitchen supplies: pots, pans, knives, cutting boards, kitchen scissors, bowls, plates, cutlery, and food storage containers. She even found coffee makers, blenders, air fryers, toasters, refrigerators, and microwaves. Since they had solar panels, she took everything. When Jin Zuyin built his base, these items could serve as rewards. With enough solar panels, they wouldn't have to worry about power shortages. After collecting those items, she moved to another warehouse and found laundry essentials: detergents, stain removers, dryer sheets, drying racks, ironing boards, irons, and laundry baskets. Alongside them were additional kitchen items such as racks and storage boxes. Thinking about the supplies piling up in the grassland within her space, Zhao Lijai took everything. These items would be useful when she decided to organize her stockpile. The other half of the warehouse contained bathroom and closet essentials. Since she still had plenty of space, she emptied the warehouse and moved on to the next with Jin Zuyin. This time, the warehouse stored hardware and tools. While rarely used in the peaceful era, these items could become valuable weapons in the apocalypse. Even nail guns alone were enough to kill zombies. Perhaps due to their durability, it was not easy to sell these things, so these products filled the entire warehouse. She took everything, planning to distribute the nail guns to the Phantom team later, especially to Xiao Kai and Feng Yun, as they would use them to kill zombies. Chapter 145, Forming Group 1. The next warehouse contained emergency and safety essentials such as first aid kits, bandages, splints, gauze, antibiotic ointments, flashlights, emergency candles, oil lamps, tents, matches, batteries, fire extinguishers, tarps, emergency blankets, and solar-powered phone chargers. The last 2 warehouses held different supplies. One stored toiletries like toilet paper, sanitizers, and trash bags. Alongside them were rain gear, sunscreen, sleeping bags, and insect repellents. The final warehouse contained water-related equipment such as purifiers, heaters, and storage tanks. By the time they finished collecting everything, the sun was already high in the sky. Jin Zuyin checked his watch and said, "Let's go to the solar panel factory." While the Phantom team was busy hoarding supplies, the Eagle team was having a headache. After they left the factory district, they went directly to the border area where the temporary survivors' camp was located. Based on their experiences coming out for supplies, it would take them at least 40 hours and at most 60 hours to reach the camp. He had made a plan to escort Pei Yijun and his team to Jiangning City as soon as he sent the survivors to the camp. Unexpectedly, his plan was ruined by the survivors. At this moment, they were resting at a gas station since they needed to refill the gas. Checking his watch, Wei Wang frowned and let out a sigh. They had been traveling for almost 30 hours, yet they had not even covered 1/3 of the journey to the camp. He glanced at the survivors, who were having lunch with smiles on their faces. The atmosphere was relaxed, as if they were on a trip and not escaping for their lives. Standing beside him, Pei Yijun asked, "Captain Wei, do you have any plans for those people?" Wei Wang glanced at him and asked in return, "Young Master Pei, do you have any suggestions?" "I think it's better to let them start killing zombies so they can learn how to protect themselves. If your team continues to protect them like this, not only will they become a burden, but they might also bring trouble in the future," Pei Yijun replied. Wei Wang thought for a moment and said, Young Master Pei, what you said is right, but it won't be easy to train the civilians and ask them to follow the rules. Pei Yijun looked at Wei Wying and asked, Captain Wei, what do you think is the most important thing in the apocalypse? Besides medicine, it should be food and water. Pei Yijun nodded and said, if you stop giving them free food and water and use them as a reward for killing a zombie instead, I believe some people will do it. With several examples, more people will join. Raising his eyebrows, Wei Wying thought for a while and said, using sticks and candies tactic is indeed a good solution. Thank you for your suggestion. When he finished speaking, he walked over to the survivors and said, everyone, form a group of 5 people and wait for further orders. Hearing his words, the survivors looked at each other in confusion. After a moment, one of them asked, Captain Wei, why are you asking us to form a group? Seeing that no one took his words seriously, Wei Wying thought about Pei Yijun's words and the information given by the Phantom team as he said, due to limited supplies, we won't be providing food or water anymore. Those who want food or water must exchange it with a crystal core. You can use 1 crystal core to exchange for a bottle of mineral water and a pack of biscuits. The moment the survivors heard his words, they were shocked and looked at him as if he were a sinner. The Eagle team members, Rong Mo, Gu Xiao's, Pei Yijun's team, and the ex-members of the Phantom team all saw their reactions. Thinking about how these survivors demanded things from them, as if they were entitled to their protection and supplies, they walked over and stood behind Wei Wying. Seeing this, the survivors' eyes flashed with worry and fear. They didn't want to be left behind after enjoying the soldiers' protection and having full bellies, but they also didn't dare to fight against the zombies. Now that they were told they would no longer get food or water, they were feeling angry. Aunt Wang stood up with her hands on her hips and said, Comrade, I see there are still several trucks of food and water. How can you lie with your eyes open and say there aren't enough supplies? Are you treating everyone as blind fools? This aunt is right. Comrade, those supplies came from the factories. As factory workers, we should have our share. You can't just cut off our supplies and tell us to kill those monsters. You are the soldiers. It's your duty to kill those monsters and protect us, the civilians, an old man added with a frown. Following their example, more and more people started to complain, speaking with righteousness as if they were the victims and Wei Wying was the bad guy. Wei Wying took note of their expressions and words. He waited until everyone finished talking before he said, there are thousands of people waiting for these supplies back at the camp. If we let you eat and drink to your heart's content, then what about those people? The survivors thought that what happened to those people was none of their concern, but no one dared to voice their thoughts aloud. So at this moment, the area fell silent. Noticing their reluctance to fight the zombies, Wei Wying continued, if you feel that it's unfair to you, you can choose to leave. We will give you some supplies and water, and then you can go on your way. By then, you don't have to listen to us and you can eat to your heart's content. Comrade, are you chasing us away? One of them asked after hearing his words. Chapter 146, Forming Group 2. This time, before Wei Wying could reply, Chu Zhimiao said, all of you only know how to complain and demand things. Even in a peaceful era, you still had to pay for what you eat and drink, let alone in our current situation. Do you know what price the soldiers have to pay to get those supplies? They risk their lives. You don't even want to risk your life to get your own food, so on what basis do you demand that they feed you? Aunt Wang was unhappy at being rebuked by her and felt that she had lost face. So she said, little girl, what do you know? We are. But before she could finish her sentence, Chu Zhimiao cut her off sharply. I know very well because my friend died when we went to get supplies. Thinking about how helpless she was as she watched Lu Jing die, her eyes reddened as she said, the ones who know nothing are all of you. How shameless of you to act so entitled when you do nothing yet expect to be protected. All of you are nothing but a burden. It's better for you all to take some supplies and leave before you put us in danger. Aunt Wang was so angry that she could only point at Chu Zhimiao and stammer, you. After listening to Chu Zhimiao's words, most of the survivors felt ashamed and reflected on their behavior. As for the rest, they were indignant and angry, feeling that they did nothing wrong. Sister Wei stood up and asked, Captain Wei, do we have to form a group with 5 people? Wei Wying thought for a moment and said, you can have more or fewer than 5 people in your group. I asked you to form groups of 5 to ensure your safety. With more people in your group, the chance of being injured or killed while fighting against zombies would be lower. But if you are confident in your skills and strength, you can go kill zombies by yourself. My team won't interfere with how you form the teams or split the rewards. When they heard his words, everyone quickly looked at those who had awakened abilities. Sister Wei nodded and said, "Understood." After she sat back down, Zyro Ju said, "Sister Wei, can I join your group?" Sister Wei nodded and agreed readily, "Of course." "Sister Wei, I also want to join your group," a young man said. "Okay." "Wang Jai, aren't you going to join your aunt?" Zyro Ju asked. "I still want to live a few more days. Besides, it's not like you don't know how bad my relationship is with my aunt," Wang Jai said with a snort. "All right, the three of us will form a group," Sister Wei said with a smile. While the three of them were discussing their plan, Chu Zhimil looked at Rong Mo and asked, "Junior Rong, Senior Gu, what about you two? Do you want to join our team?" Gu Shaoz glanced at Pei Yijun and Han Jai before saying, "Thank you for your invitation, but Mo and I are not used to fighting in large groups." Since they had refused, Chu Zhimil didn't insist and said, "That's a pity. If you change your mind, you can come and find us." Pei Yijun looked at Gu Shaoz for a moment before saying, "Myro Miao, let's go." After his team left, Rong Mo asked, "Shaoz, why didn't you want to join Senior Pei's group?" Gu Shaoz raised his eyebrows and asked, "Mo, do you think their team is strong?" Rong Mo nodded and replied, "Of course. You saw how Senior Li Yang sent Teacher Cao flying with a punch." Gu Shaoz nodded and asked again, "Then, do you know that Pei Yijun is a young master of the Pei family?" This time, Rong Mo shook her head. She had just enrolled in university and finished her military training when the world suddenly turned into hell. How would she know about Pei Yijun's family background? Gu Shaoz pinched her nose and explained, "As someone born with a silver spoon in his mouth, he is arrogant and often overestimates himself. If we were in a peaceful era, his personality would be fine, but in our current situation, where one wrong move could cost you your life, his arrogance is a fatal flaw. With such a powerful lightning-type ability, he will definitely challenge stronger opponents, thinking that he is stronger than others. His pride won't allow him to retreat or escape. Also, did you notice that his team is missing 2 people? Now, if you follow him, do you think your chances of survival will be higher or lower?" When Rong Mo thought about it, she realized Pei Yijun's team was indeed missing 2 members. Just considering what might have happened to them made her shiver. She held Gu Shao's arm and said, "It's still Senior Gu who is wise." Gu Shaoz glanced at her and said, "In the future, you must consider all possibilities, the advantages and disadvantages of every situation. Don't blindly trust people's words or judge things only by their surface." Hearing his words, Rong Mo smiled and replied, "I will listen to you, but with you around, I'm sure no one will be able to take advantage of me." Gu Shaoz knocked her lightly on the head and said, "I won't be able to stay by your side forever. Sometimes, humans are scarier than zombies. You have to learn how to protect yourself." Rong Mo rubbed her forehead but said nothing. She knew that one day he would leave. Although they were a team, they had only known each other for a few days. If he decided to leave, she would have nothing to make him stay. An hour later, Wei Wying stood in front of a group of survivors and looked at them. The group consisted mainly of middle-aged people. He wasn't sure if they could survive on their own, but he still asked, "Are you all sure you want to leave?" Chapter 147, Training 1. Aunt Wang nodded and said, "Comrade, since you can't tolerate us any longer, it's better for us to leave. I don't believe we can't survive without you." Hearing her words, Wei Wying simply stared at her without responding. Seeing that they were determined to leave, he nodded and said, "Since you have made up your mind, we won't stop you." After saying this, he gestured to one of his soldiers and ordered, "Go get them some supplies and let them leave." The soldier nodded and replied, "Yes, Captain." Aunt Wang and her group followed the soldier to the military truck. The moment they saw the supplies, their eyes lit up. There was not only food and water, but also medicine and daily necessities. When Aunt Wang saw the soldier only packing some food and water for them, she frowned and asked, "Comrade, why aren't we getting any medicine?" "These medicines will be brought back to the camp," the soldier replied. Aunt Wang glanced at the others, and they nodded at her. After exchanging glances, one of them suddenly fell to the ground, shouting, "Aya, my stomach." The soldier was startled by his sudden shout and quickly went to check on him. Holding onto the middle-aged man's body, he asked, "Comrade, what's wrong with you?" The middle-aged man clutched the soldier's arm and groaned, "Comrade, my stomach is in so much pain. Please save me." "Comrade, let go of me first. I will go inform my captain," the soldier replied with a frown. The middle-aged man glanced at Aunt Wang and the others. Seeing that they were ready to act, he cried out even louder, "Quickly, I'm dying. Ayu, my stomach." Although the soldier was annoyed by his behavior, he still nodded. When the middle-aged man finally released him, the soldier stood up and went to find Wei Wang. The moment he left, Aunt Wang and her group quickly grabbed the supplies. The middle-aged man rushed over and snatched several boxes of medicine. As they were busy stuffing the supplies into their bags, the soldier returned with Wei Wang. Seeing that they were stolen supplies, he instantly realized he had been tricked. "Stop!" As soon as they heard his voice, Aunt Wang and her group no longer hesitated and quickly ran away. The soldier wanted to chase after them to reclaim the stolen supplies, but Wei Wang stopped him. "Let them go." "Captain, they took a lot of medicine," the soldier said reluctantly. "We can get more medicine later. Right now, we have more important things to do," Wei Wang said, patting the soldier's shoulder. The soldier lowered his head, feeling guilty. He had thought that no matter how unruly the survivors were, they wouldn't dare to steal their supplies. Unexpectedly, their shamelessness exceeded his expectations. "Go find some people to guard the supplies," Wei Wang added. "Yes, Captain." 10 minutes later, the soldier returned with his comrades. Wei Wang looked at them and said, "You will stay here and guard the supplies and vehicles. If anyone tries to steal from them, just tie them up." "Understood," the soldiers responded in unison. Half an hour later, Wei Wang stood in front of the remaining survivors and said, "Since none of you have experience killing zombies, we will head to a nearby road to practice. Although zombies look scary, their movements are slower than humans. As long as you observe their movements, you can dodge their attacks. Their weakness lies in their brains, so don't waste your energy hitting other parts. Focus on aiming for their heads. As long as you destroy their brains, they will die. Each group will be led by 2 soldiers. All of you must follow their orders to reduce the risk of injury or death. Does anyone have any questions?" he asked. After he finished speaking, Xiaoju raised her hand and asked, "Captain Wei, do we have to share the crystals or supplies with the soldiers assigned to our team?" Wei Wang smiled and replied, "You don't have to. They are here to teach you how to kill zombies. We will stay here for 2 days to practice. After that, you can decide whether to follow us back to the camp or go your own way." Seeing that no one had any more questions, he assigned 2 soldiers to each team and sent them to the nearby road to practice killing zombies. Since Sister Wei and her group only had 3 people, the soldiers brought them to a smaller road where the number of zombies was lower than on the main road. Standing outside the road, they could hear the distant sound of zombies roaring. Noticing their trembling hands and pale faces, one of the soldiers encouraged them, "Don't be afraid. We will be guarding you. If you are in danger, we will kill the zombies." Sister Wei's hands trembled as she listened to the roars growing closer. Although they had been given weapons, most were just iron rods or wooden sticks. They had witnessed how Jin Zuyan and Zhao Lijai killed zombies. Even with their rotten heads, zombie skulls were not easy to break. Roar! Without giving her more time to prepare, the first zombie finally reached their location. The moment it caught their scent, it let out an excited roar and pounced at them. Seeing the incoming claws, they instinctively closed their eyes. "Open your eyes and watch the incoming attack." Hearing the soldier's command, Sister Wei forced herself to open her eyes. As she saw the zombie's claws swinging toward her, her body swayed, and she lost her footing, accidentally dodging the attack. The zombie, missing its target, stumbled and nearly fell to the ground. Noticing the opportunity, the soldier shouted, "Hit the back of the head." The moment they heard the instruction, Sister Wei, Xiaoju, and Wang Jai raised their iron rods and wooden sticks, swinging them down. Duog crack. The sickening sound of the skull cracking echoed in their ears. Seeing the zombie collapse with its back facing them, they gritted their teeth and kept striking. Duog duogs duog. The soldiers watched as they smashed the zombie's head into a pulp before one of them finally said, "Enough, it's dead." Chapter 148, Training 2. After killing the zombie, their initial fear lessened. Looking at the black blood and rotten flesh, Xiaoju let out a dry heave but still used her stick to stir the rotten brain. 5 minutes later, she saw a small crystal glistening under the sunlight. Feeling excited, she reached out and picked it up before flicking her hands several times to remove the black blood and rotten flesh. The soldiers nodded and said, "Congratulations, comrade. You have successfully killed a zombie and obtained a crystal. At this moment, the crystal represented food and water. With this thought, the three of them found a new goal: to kill as many zombies as possible to collect more crystals. While Sister Wei's group was making progress, the other teams were struggling. Stab! A soldier drove his dagger into the back of a zombie's head, killing it instantly. As the zombie fell to the ground with a thud, he looked at the survivors squatting with their hands covering their heads. Turning to his companion, he asked, "What should we do? It seems impossible to get them to kill zombies. They won't even dare to look at them." His friend thought for a moment and said, "If we take them back like this, the captain will blame us." "But they are too cowardly. If they don't have the courage to fight, there is no way to train them," the soldier said frustratedly. Hearing their conversation, a young man hesitantly raised his head and said, "See, comrade, we are not cowards, we are just not used to it." The soldiers looked at them in disbelief. The men were slightly better. They had only closed their eyes and run away. The real problem was the women. The moment they saw a zombie, they screamed instead of attacking. Fortunately, they weren't on the main road, or their screams would have attracted more zombies, dooming them all. After hesitating for a moment, one of the soldiers said, "We will try one more time. If you still can't kill a zombie, we will take you back to the gas station. Whether or not you get food or water after that isn't our concern." Hearing his words, the survivors finally realized the truth. If they didn't kill zombies, they wouldn't get crystals, which meant they would starve. Seeing the shift in their expressions, another soldier said, "I will go pull a zombie over. Get ready." After he left, the group pushed themselves up and gripped their wooden sticks tightly. Not long after, they heard a zombie's roar in the distance. When they saw the soldier returning, they looked behind him and spotted a female zombie chasing after him, its intestines hanging out, swaying with each step. The women's mouths opened, ready to scream, but before they could, the soldier snapped, "If you dare to scream and attract more zombies, I will leave you behind to feed them." At his warning, they clamped their hands over their mouths, letting out only muffled whimpers. They didn't dare make a sound and could only stare at the zombie in horror. By the time the soldier reached them, there was still some distance between them and the zombie. Just from this, they should have been able to gauge its speed. After the soldier returned, he and his friend took several back, letting the group face the zombie. "It's raw." The zombie let out a deafening roar, baring its sharp teeth as it lunged at the young man. Seeing the incoming zombie, the young man glanced at the soldiers, only to see them standing to the side, watching. The moment he saw this, his heart sank. He realized they had no intention of helping him this time. Faced with the possibility of being bitten and eaten alive, his will to survive surged out from his heart. He raised his wooden stick and swung it hard. Crack! The stick lodged in the zombie's teeth, showing signs of splintering, with its mouth blocked. The zombie couldn't bite him and could only swing its arms wildly. "Open your eyes and watch the direction of the attack," a soldier ordered when he saw the young man wanting to close his eyes again. Hearing this, the young man opened his eyes, focused on the rotten arms reaching for him, and quickly stepped back. The claws missed, causing the zombie to stumble. "Kick it," another soldier said. Following the command, he lifted his leg and kicked the zombie's side. Thud! The force of his kick sent the zombie crashing to the ground. As it struggled to get up, the soldier instructed, "Use your weapon and hit its head." With no weapon left, the young man snatched a wooden stick from a nearby woman's hands. Before the zombie could rise, he brought the stick down hard on the back of its head. Thud, 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 crack. The sickening sound of bones shattering mixed with the splatter of black blood and rotten flesh. As the other survivors watched his brutal attack, they instinctively stepped back, distancing themselves from him. A few minutes later, he finally stopped and slumped to the ground when the head of the zombie turned into a pool of rotten paste. His stomach churned violently, and he turned to the side, vomiting. A soldier pulled out a bottle of water from his backpack and handed it to him. He patted the young man's back and said, "Well done. Now check the brain, see if there is a crystal." The young man rinsed his mouth, took a few gulps of water, and forced his nausea down before checking the zombie's brain. Fortunately, luck was on his side. He found a small transparent crystal. Seeing this, the group cheered, and one of the women exclaimed, "Brother, we are so lucky. With this, we can at least get a bottle of water and a pack of biscuits." The young man wiped his lips and scoffed, "When I was in danger, all of you just watched. Now that I have a crystal you want to share, dream on." With that, he pulled the wooden stick from the zombie's mouth, tossed it back to the young woman, and, gripping his own weapon tightly, walked toward the road, determined to kill more zombies on his own. Chapter 149, Invitation. Meanwhile, on the main road, several groups were fighting against zombies, with soldiers providing support and instructions from the sidelines. While every group had at least 5 or more people, a robust man was fighting the zombies alone. Crack! The moment the iron rod on his hand smashed into a zombie's head, it cracked the zombie's skull, and its rotten flesh split open. Black blood splattered across the ground as the zombie collapsed with a thud. Zra! Before he could check for the crystal cause, 2 zombies rushed forward, pouncing toward the man's back. Hearing their roars, he turned swiftly and swung his iron rod with full force. Duog, bam! The impact not only broke the zombie's neck, but also sent it flying, crashing into another zombie beside it. As the fallen zombie struggled to stand up, he dashed toward it and raised his iron rod. Crack, splash! The rod struck the zombie's head, killing it instantly. Zra! Noticing the zombie beneath him reaching out with its sharp claws, the man stomped on its arm. Crack! The sound of bones snapping echoed in the surroundings. He looked down at the zombie, no longer feeling fear, only excitement and hatred remained in his eyes. Crack, crack, crack! He swung his iron rod down repeatedly until the zombie finally stopped moving. Unlike the others, who used their weapons to stir the brain, he reached in with his bare hands, searching for the crystal. Standing on the sidelines, the soldiers assigned to guide him exchanged glances. This man was a promising recruit. He was fearless, and it seemed he had awakened an ability. After a while, he found only one crystal and tucked it into his pocket. As he turned to walk back to the road, the soldiers approached him. Comrade, please wait. Hearing this, He Yupeng turned around and asked, What's wrong? Comrade, have you awakened an ability? One of the soldiers inquired. I'm not sure, but after recovering from a high fever, my strength increased drastically. Does that count as an ability? He Yupeng asked in return. The soldiers exchanged knowing smiles, and one of them said, Comrade, are you interested in joining the Eagle team? He Yupeng was taken aback by the offer. After a brief hesitation, he asked, Isn't your team a military unit? I'm just a civilian. How can I join? Comrade, the situation has changed. Many of our comrades sacrificed their lives during missions, and we need strong people to join us. If you are interested, you can come with us and discuss the details with Captain Wei. Initially, He Yupeng had no intention of joining any group, but after witnessing the terrifying scale of the zombie attack in the factory district, he realized that being in a team would increase his chances of survival. He had planned to seek out strong individuals and form a group himself, but he hadn't expected the soldiers to take an interest in his strength. While joining the military would mean restrictions on his freedom, it would also provide stable access to supplies and crystal cores as payment. After weighing the pros and cons, he nodded and said, All right. The soldiers were pleased with his decision and led him to meet Wei Wang. They had seen how Jin Zuyan recruited ability users into his Phantom team. Even though he claimed his team would no longer be military and would become a mercenary team, his decision to strengthen his team was wise. After that day, Wei Wang had already instructed them to observe the survivors. If they found anyone with abilities, they were to invite them to join the Eagle team. As He Yupeng followed the soldiers, some survivors glanced in their direction. Most of them were ordinary people, but a few had awakened abilities. If they could join the military, they wouldn't have to worry about food and water anymore. With these thoughts in mind, several people trailed behind the soldiers, eager to see if joining the Eagle team was truly an option. At the same time, a young man was hiding on the rooftop of a 2-story shop. A pile of stones was stacked beside him. The number of zombies wandering in this area was several times higher than near the gas station. With so many people fighting for zombie kills near the gas station, he hadn't been able to collect any crystals. Confident that he wouldn't be injured or killed, he had ventured here alone. Now, gripping a stone in his palm, he narrowed his eyes. The moment a zombie turned its head, he threw the stone with precision. Whoosh, crack! The ordinary stone shot forward with the speed of a bullet, piercing through the back of the zombie's skull. Watching the zombie collapse, the corners of his lips curled into a grin. One down, he muttered under his breath. With his hidden position and the short distance, killing zombies was effortless. In less than 20 minutes, he had taken down more than 10 zombies. Standing on the rooftop, he scanned the area. Once he confirmed no more zombies were approaching, he jumped down onto the first-floor balcony, then onto the ground. He walked toward the zombie's corpse, pulled the machete from his back, and swung downward. Crack! With a single movement, he split open the zombie's head. Using the machete, he stirred the rotten brain to find the crystal. Out of 16 zombies, he only found 7 crystals. After securing the crystals in his belt bag, he sprinted back toward the gas station. A journey that would take others half an hour only took him less than 10 minutes. His figure blurred as he moved at an astonishing speed. As he ran, his sharp eyes scanned the surroundings. He had once witnessed a woman transform into a zombie back in the factory district. From that moment, he knew he had also been infected with the virus, because he too was scratched by a protruding iron covered with black blood. At first, he believed he was doomed. He had planned to end his life before turning into a mindless monster. Chapter 150, Unconventional Fighting Style. When his body temperature began dropping, he decided to at least die with a full stomach, so he had finished off all the water and food given to him by the soldiers. Unexpectedly, after a night of mild fever, he woke up the next morning feeling completely normal. Not only that, but his eyesight and strength had improved dramatically. At that moment, he realized he had awakened an ability, and with his speed-type ability included, he was now a triple ability user. This was why he dared to hunt zombies alone in this dangerous area. Not long after he returned to the gas station, he noticed a group of people chatting instead of killing zombies. Curious, he walked over and asked, "Brother, what's going on? Why aren't you all killing zombies?" Hearing his question, one of them replied unhappily, "How can we kill zombies when an ability user is busy showing off his power?" "Who is it?" the young man asked. The survivor pointed toward the main road and said, "I heard this person is part of a powerful man's team." Before the young man could ask more questions, someone patted his shoulder. Turning around, he saw a woman looking at him with displeasure. "Lin Fei, where are you going?" she asked. Raising an eyebrow, Lin Fei replied, "I had a stomach ache, so I went to relieve myself. Why, you want to join me?" The woman frowned at his nonchalant reply and asked, "Lin Fei, what's with your attitude? Didn't we agree to practice killing the zombies together?" "With so many people in the group, losing one person won't make a difference, right?" Lin Fei said casually. "Lin Fei, if you keep acting like this, I won't be able to help you when Manager Wang kicks you out of the group," the woman said, a hint of anger in her voice. Lin Fei stared at her for a moment before saying, "Su Ling, let's break up." Su Ling's eyes widened in disbelief when she heard his words. She grabbed his arm and demanded, "Lin Fei, what do you mean by that? After everything I have done for you, you actually want to break up with me?" Lin Fei met her gaze, pushed away her hand and said, "Su Ling, do you think I don't know what you have been doing behind my back? If you don't want me to air your dirty laundry, you'd better stay out of my business." Before leaving, he added, "If you want to please that old man, that's your choice, but stop thinking you can use me as your stepping stone." Su Ling's body stiffened at his words. She stared at his back in shock. She had always been careful whenever she met with Manager Wang, so how did Lin Fei know? After leaving, Lin Fei headed to the main road to see the person who was showing off. Before he even arrived, he could already hear the roars of zombies. Boom! Hearing the loud sound, he frowned and quickened his pace. After several days of observation, he knew that such a noise would attract even more zombies. "Does that person have no brain?" he muttered, his frown deepening. When he finally saw the situation, he was speechless. At the front line, Hanjai was throwing wooden balls at the zombies, smashing their heads. Although the wooden balls could kill the zombies, it took several hits to destroy their brains. Wooden balls were scattered all over the road, and due to his missed attacks, the pavement was cracked and damaged. Would they have to find another road later when they left? While Lin Fei was silently criticizing Hanjai, Wei Wang pinched the bridge of his nose. Watching Hanjai fight gave him a headache. He had assumed that everyone in Pei Yijin's team would be at least as resourceful as their leader, if not as strong. But after observing them, he realized that Chu Zhimiao only knew how to produce water and couldn't use her ability in combat. As for Hanjai, he was the type to sacrifice 800 soldiers just to take down 1,000 enemies. Not only was he wasting his energy with ineffective attacks, but he also relied too much on his ability. In Pei Yijin's team, only Li Yang had decent attack power. Compared to other strength-type ability users, he was stronger. From what Li Yang had mentioned, he should already be at level 1. With such an unbalanced team, they would surely lose when facing stronger enemies. While Wei Weiying analyzed the situation, Pei Yijun did the same. He had been observing Han Jai for over a week. Seeing him show off his power now, Pei Yijun made up his mind to kick him out of the team once they reached Jiangning City. With that decision made, he shifted his gaze to Rong Mo and Gu Shao's. Even though they were only 2 people, they had already killed more than 30 zombies. Their attack patterns were unconventional yet effective. They skillfully used the terrain and surroundings to their advantage. If he could invite them into his team, they could improve his team's overall strength. Boom! A fireball the size of a baseball struck a zombie's head, engulfing it in flames. Raw! The zombie roared and pounced at Rong Mo. Before its sharp claws could reach her, Gu Shao's appeared from the side and swung his dagger, stabbing the back of the zombie's head. Seeing this, Rong Mo clenched her palm, and the flames burning the zombie's head extinguished instantly. Gu Shao's pulled his dagger from the zombie's skull and said, "Mo, be more careful next time. I was almost roasted to a crisp by your fire." Ignoring his complaint, Rong Mo said while breathing heavily, "Shao's, check for the crystal." Using his dagger, Gu Shao's split open the zombie's head and searched for a while before saying, "There's no crystal." Hearing this, Rong Mo let out a sigh and said, "It seems crystal cores aren't easy to come by." Chapter 151, Flying. Gu Shao's chuckled when he heard Rong Mo's words and replied, "If they were easy, we wouldn't be able to trade them for food." Both of them had run out of energy and walked back to the gas station. Using the last of his strength, Gu Shao's created a water ball so they could wash their hands and clean the crystal cores. When they were done, he handed the crystals to Rong Mo and said, "You keep these." Holding the crystals, Rong Mo hesitated before asking, "Why don't we split them evenly?" Raising an eyebrow, Gu Shao's leaned in closer and asked, "Mo, are you planning to join another group?" Seeing his handsome face come so close, Rong Mo took a step back and said as she avoided his gaze, "I'm not." Putting his hands on his hips, Gu Shao's narrowed his eyes and asked again, "Then why are you distancing yourself from me?" "I'm not, you are overthinking things." "If you are not, then why don't you want to keep the crystals? Don't tell me you want me to manage our supplies. I'm no good at that kind of thing. It's better if you handle it." After saying those words, he turned and walked to the rest area, leaving Rong Mo standing there in dilemma. Since he didn't give her a chance to refuse, she could only put the crystals in her bag and follow him. While the Eagle team was busy training the survivors, the Phantom team was facing another zombie horde. Boom, whoosh. Raw. Standing on top of the metal platform, Qin Luzi looked at the raging fire tornado and said, "Not bad, Jinj." Shen Jinj gritted his teeth as he struggled to keep the fire tornado under control. Sweat formed a thin layer on his forehead as he channeled more energy into his palms to stabilize it. As the fire tornado swept through the area, zombies were either burned to ashes or sucked into the vortex. The moment the zombies entered the tornado, their bodies shredded into pieces. With this wide-range attack, the number of zombies roaring beneath the platform decreased by 1/10 in an instant. Watching the tornado cut through the horde, an idea flashed in Qin Luzi's mind. Opening his palm, he summoned a small tornado that hovered above it. He focused his energy, reshaping the spinning air. As he compressed the tornado, it slowly transformed into a flat, disc-like shape. Although it looked like a piece of flatbread, the disc spun at an incredible speed, its edges razor-sharp. Even from a distance, his teammates could feel the sharpness radiating from it. Once the wind disc stabilized, Qin Luzi continued compressing it until it was as thin as paper. He was surprised to find that creating this disc consumed significantly less energy than maintaining a tornado. He turned his gaze to the approaching zombies and, with a flick of his wrist, hurled the wind disc toward them. Crash, crash, crash. Spinning rapidly, the wind disc sliced through the zombies as if they were made of butter. Heads and limbs were severed cleanly, and within seconds the zombies collapsed to the ground. Black blood splattered everywhere, thickening the already rancid stench in the air. Unlike the tornado, which required significant effort to control, Qin Luzi realized he could manipulate the wind disc with ease. With a simple flick of his wrist, the disc made a sharp turn and flew back toward the platform. Seeing this, Zyro Kai shouted in alarm, "Brother Luzi, be careful, your attack is coming back at you." Chin Luzi smiled when he heard his panic's voice. When the wind disc was 2 meters away, he raised his hand, and it halted an inch from his palm. Lowering his hand slightly, the disc floats steadily above his palm. Watching this, Zhao Lijai smiled. His attack resembled her water blade technique. While the others were still amazed by his new skill, Chin Luzi focused his energy on his feet. The next moment, he bent his knees and jumped. Everyone was shocked by his sudden movement. They expected him to fall into the zombie horde, but to their shock, he remained floating in midair. Even Jin Zuyan and Zhao Lijai were stunned. It wasn't impossible for a wind-type ability user to fly, but the energy consumption was enormous, and precise control over the ability was essential. Chin Luzi floated in the air with ease as he created another wind disc. With a wave of his hand, he sent it slicing through another group of zombies. As the Phantom team watched him kill zombies while floating like an immortal, envy filled their hearts. He was already good-looking, now he could even fly. How were they supposed to find girlfriends with someone like him on the team? While everyone was howling with envy, Feng Yun was busy experimenting with his skills. Although he could eliminate a large number of zombies with his space crack, it wasn't a sustainable solution for a prolonged battle. If he could create a space crack that absorbed everything into it, then theoretically, he should also be able to use his space to shoot out metal bullets. With this idea in mind, he concentrated his space ability at his fingertips and flicked his fingers toward the zombies. Instead of severing his connection with the space energy, he stretched it like rubber. In that split second, he saw a projection of his space storage in front of him. Using his mind, he retrieved a handful of metal bullets from his space. Shoot crack, crack, crack. The next moment, the metal bullets shot out from the connected area created by his space energy. Perhaps due to the difference in gravitational force between his space and the outside world, the bullets flew at an incredible speed. The bullets hit the zombies, but he couldn't control their direction. Some bullets managed to hit the zombies' heads, piercing their skulls and killing them instantly. Others missed their targets. Although he lacked precision, Feng Yun was thrilled. If he could master control over the attack direction, these metal bullets would become a deadly weapon in his hands. Chapter 152, Clearing Up the Factories, 1. As the Phantom team continued to kill zombies, the sun slowly set on the western horizon. Seeing this, Jin Zuyan said, "We should clear these zombies as soon as possible before the red moon rises." Hearing his order, the soldiers nodded and replied in unison, "Understood." Following his command, they no longer held back and unleashed their skills one after another. Boom, booms, boom. The sound of explosions echoed across several hundred meters. As the sun disappeared and the red moon rose, the zombies let out roars one after another. Zroar! Boom! Zhou Huajian's vines were blocked when it flew toward a zombie's head. Seeing this, his eyes flashed with surprise as he pulled the vines back. Zroar! A zombie grabbed onto his vine and yanked it forcefully. Compared to the daytime, the zombies' strength had increased by at least 50%. In addition to their enhanced strength, their agility had also improved. Seeing Zhou Huajian about to be pulled down from the platform, Zhao Lijai flicked her wrist, sending water blades flying toward the zombies. Crash, crash, crash. The water blades slashed off the zombies' arms, freeing the vines. With another flick of her wrist, the blades made a sharp turn and cut off the zombies' heads. Besides Zhou Huajian, the rest of the team was also struggling to fend off the zombies. Seeing that fewer than 500 zombies remained, Jin Zuyan ordered, "All of you retreat." As soon as they heard his command, the soldiers leaped from the platform onto the metal wall. From their elevated position, they saw their captain holding Zhao Lijai's hand while launching a series of fireballs at the zombies. As the black flames engulfed the zombie horde, the energy absorbed by Jin Zuyan was transferred to Zhao Lijai through their clasped hands. If the energy wasn't released from their bodies, both of them would suffer internal injuries, if not outright explode from overabsorption. Raising her hands, Zhao Lijai created a water ball. Unlike before, she didn't use her ability to attack since Jin Zuyan alone was enough to clear the zombies. Instead, she focused on expanding the water ball's size. 30 minutes later, the entire horde had been reduced to ashes. When Jin Zuyan finally released Zhao Lijai's hand, he glanced at the massive water ball floating in midair. Judging by its size, it contained at least 10,000 gallons of water. While the soldiers wondered why she had created such a massive water ball, Zhao Lijai let out a sigh of relief. She had used the energy transferred by Jin Zuyan to form the water ball. However, upon seeing the final size, she was surprised to realize that the energy he had transferred was nearly twice her current energy pool's maximum capacity. Since Zyro Kai and Feng Yun couldn't store the water ball directly, she had no choice but to put it in her space. Raising her left hand, she glanced at the soldiers. After thinking for a moment, she flicked her right wrist while at the same time waving her left hand. Splash! At the exact moment she stored the giant water ball in her space, she created several smaller water balls and burst them. Using those smaller splashes as a distraction, no one noticed the large water ball's sudden disappearance. When the soldiers saw the water ball explode, they sighed in disappointment. If they had been able to store that water ball, they wouldn't have had to worry about a water shortage for months. What a waste of energy. Seeing that his Aitg had finished, Jin Zuyan said, Zyro Kai, collect the crystals. Yes, Captain, Zyro Kai responded, jumping onto the metal platform before leaping to the ground. While he gathered the crystal cores, the rest of the team jumped down from the wall and platform. When Mo then converted the metal wall and platform into metal bullets. The moment he finished, Feng Yun quickly stored the bullets in his space. With the Wen brothers around, he doesn't have to worry about running out of ammunition. Once Zyro Kai finished collecting the crystals, he handed them to Zhao Lijai before they returned to camp. When no one was looking, she quietly stored the crystal cores in her space. By the time they arrived, the survivors had woken up. Jin Zuyan didn't allow them to stay and instructed them to leave the next morning. After washing up and having dinner, the team took turns patrolling while the others rested for the night. When the sun rose the next morning, Zhao Lijai took out 4 backpacks from her space and filled them with enough food and water for 2 weeks. She then added some medicines before handing them to Jin Zuyan. Carrying the backpacks, Jin Zuyan walked over to the survivors and said, There is enough food and water for 2 weeks inside. You can head to Jiangning City and join a survivor base built by the government there. The survivors knew that this group of people were soldiers, but since the team was unwilling to take them in, they didn't insist. After receiving the backpacks and weapons, they had breakfast with the Phantom team before parting ways. Once the survivors left, Jin Zuyan looked at his team and said, Pack up, we will leave after checking the rest of the factories. Yes, Captain. By the time they had packed everything, it was already 7 o'clock in the morning. They boarded their armored vehicles and drove straight to the solar panel factory. Since they had already cleared the zombies the day before, they proceeded directly to the factory. While Qin Luzi and the rest of the team searched for survivors, Zhao Lijai and Jin Zuyan headed to the warehouse. There were 10 warehouses in the factory. Besides monocrystalline and polycrystalline solar panels, there were also thin-film solar panels. The panels varied in size and energy absorption efficiency. Zhao Lijai didn't know much about solar panels, so she simply stored everything in her space. She then went to check the surrounding area and found additional solar panels installed throughout the factory. Chapter 153, Clearing Up the Factories, 2. An hour later, Qin Luzi returned with the others and reported, Captain, there are no survivors. Jin Zuyan nodded and said, Let's go. After leaving the solar panel factory, they headed to the pharmaceutical factory. This time, Zyro Kai and Feng Yun also joined the warehouse team to collect medicines, while Qin Luzi led the rest in searching for survivors. While Zhang Yuan drove the armored vehicle, Qin Luzi checked the map in his mind. Besides scattered red dots on the map, there was nothing else. The size of the pharmaceutical factory was larger than the solar panel factory, and it took them 30 minutes just to reach the dormitory area. This time he saw white dots mixed with some green and red dots in the dormitory buildings. He pointed at the building and said, Vice Captain, there are survivors in the building. Zhang Yuan nodded and drove the car into the dormitory area. After they exited the armored vehicles, he said, Li Sikai, Yin Yunsheng. Both of you stay here and guard the cars. The rest of you, come with me. Since the two of them hadn't awakened their abilities, they didn't insist on going and stayed to guard the cars. When they were 10 meters from the building, Qin Luzi said, Vice Captain, there are a total of 29 zombies on the ground floor and 7 zombies in the guard post. With his warning, Zhang Yuan divided their team and said, Jinj, Bohai, the 2 of you go to the guard post. The rest, follow me to the building. Yes, Vice Captain. Zra. The moment Zhang Yuan opened the door, the zombies were attracted by their scent and rushed over. Perhaps due to being locked inside the building, the zombies weren't drenched by the rain and were still at level 0. So, despite their roaring like wild beasts, their movements were slow. After fighting against level 1 and level 2 zombies, the Phantom Team's members found these zombies kind of cute as they wobbled toward them. Taking out their blades, they hacked the zombies' heads and chopped them off like cabbages. Even without using their abilities, they could kill the zombies with ease. It took them less than 10 minutes to clear out the zombies. Afterward, they split open the rotten heads to find the crystals. 15 minutes later, Joe Huajian said, "Vice Captain, there are no crystals at all." Feeling disappointed, Zhang Yuan said, "It seems that only those zombies outside have crystals. Let's not waste time and clear the rest of the zombies." Everyone nodded and climbed the stairs. Although the dormitory building had 6 floors, there was no elevator, only stairs. The moment they stepped onto the first floor, a rancid smell hit their noses. Qin Luzi checked his map and said, "There are no zombies." Hearing his words, they lowered their blades and proceeded to the next floor. It took them almost an hour to clear out the zombies in the entire building. When they were done, Qin Luzi knocked on one of the doors on the 6th floor. After waiting for a while, he realized that the people inside were unwilling to come out. So he said, "We have cleared the zombies in this building. You can come out and inform the rest of the survivors." Seeing that there was no response, he added, "If you want to leave, we will give you some supplies and water." Not long after he said this, the door finally opened. A man with sunken cheeks stared at them from the small opening and asked hoarsely, "Who are you?" Qin Luzi looked at him and said, "We are a mercenary team." "Why are you helping us? What do you want?" the man asked again. "We want nothing from you. We only help you because we want to stop the increase of zombies. If you can survive, at least you can help kill some zombies," Zhang Yuan replied. After hearing his words, the man asked again, "Are you really going to give us supplies?" Zhang Yuan nodded and said, "If you come with us, we will give you enough supplies for you to go to Jining City and join the survivor base there." Since the Eagle team and Pei Yijin's team were going to Jining City, it was okay to send these survivors there. With this thought, Zhang Yuan didn't feel any guilt about sending more people. The thin man closed the door and reopened it a few minutes later. Besides the thin man, there were several people in the room. When they saw their chapped lips and pale faces, Chen Qianfeng asked, "Comrade, do you have any water containers?" Hearing his words, a thin woman nodded and handed over her empty bottle with trembling hands. Chen Qianfeng took the bottle and opened the lid. With a flick of his fingers, water appeared out of thin air and flowed into the bottle. In less than a few minutes, the bottle was full. When it was done, he handed it back to the woman. The moment they saw the water, they licked their lips. Although they were thirsty, they didn't know if the water was safe to drink. They had seen people turn into zombies after drinking water from the faucet or rainwater, so no one dared to drink water carelessly. Even though the woman noticed their gazes, she was so thirsty that her throat felt like it was burning. She looked at the people outside the room and decided to trust them. Closing her eyes, she drank the water as if she were taking poison. The moment it entered her mouth, a cool sensation flowed down her throat, soothing the burning sensation. After taking a few sips, she blinked several times before she finished half a bottle of water. Seeing that she was fine after drinking the unknown water, the rest of them looked at Chen Qianfeng as if he were a golden goose. One of them asked, "Comrade, can you give me some water too?" Chapter 154, Rescue 1. Chen Qianfeng took the man's empty bottle and filled it with water. Afterward, he filled the rest of their bottles. Once they drank, he refilled them again. Realizing how generous this group was, they no longer doubted their words and were willing to follow them. With the group as an example, more people came out of their rooms after hearing the conversation and asking for water. After receiving their water, they followed Zhang Yuan and his team. Due to the fact that the number of survivors was more than 200 people, they walked to the warehouse area, while Wen Mo and Wen Kai drove their armored vehicles. Those who were unable to walk due to hunger took the cars and were given some jelly to reduce their hunger. Meanwhile, Zyro Kai and Feng Yun were busy collecting the medicines on the list while Zhao Lijai waited for them. Since it would take a while for them to finish, she said, "Brother Yan, I want to check the laboratory." When he heard this, Jin Zuyan knew what she wanted to do. As a pharmaceutical factory, there would be laboratories to research new medicines. After the apocalypse, medicines became scarce not only due to the limited ingredients, but also because they lacked tools and researchers. Thinking about those tools, he nodded and said, "Let's go." Before leaving, he went to Xirokai and said, "Xirokai, we will go check out something. When you and Feng Yun are done, guard the door. If Zhang Yuan brings survivors back, give them enough supplies for 2 weeks and let them go to Jiangning City." Xirokai was used to following his orders, so when he heard his words, he nodded without questioning the decision. Understood. After leaving some instructions, Jin Zuyin and Zhao Lijai left the warehouse area and went to check the other areas. The two of them checked the map of the factory on the roadside and went directly to the laboratory area. 30 minutes later, they stood outside a 3-story building. Without Qin Luzi, they couldn't be sure that there were no zombies inside, so they took out their weapons before entering the building. The moment they opened the door, they heard the humming sound of electricity. Unlike the rest of the world, where a rancid stench filled the air, the laboratory smelled like disinfectant, cold and clean. As they walked, Zhao Lijai looked around and saw the map on the wall. The two of them checked it and realized that the first, second, and third floors were used as the researchers' offices, while the research laboratory was built underground. "Brother Yan, let's go get the data first. We can get the tools later," Zhao Lijai said. "Okay," Jin Zuyin agreed readily. Although it was only a pile of data, its value was immeasurable. As long as they could get the data, they wouldn't have to start from scratch if they wanted to produce medicines in the future. Zhao Lijai and Jin Zuyin had zero knowledge of medical research. Since their time was limited, they just took everything, including the desks, chairs, and cabinets, leaving only 4 bare walls when they left. It took them 30 minutes to clear out the offices. With the electricity still running, they used the elevator and went to the underground laboratory. The moment the elevator door opened, the rancid smell of rotten flesh hit their noses. The two of them exchanged glances and walked slowly. Besides their footsteps, there was no sound at all in the laboratory. When they reached the first room, they saw a group of zombies wandering inside through the glass. The door was made of metal, and the walls were covered with tempered glass. Even when they stood close to the glass, the zombies showed no reaction. To avoid leaving any hidden dangers, Zhao Lijai said, "Brother Yan, we should kill these zombies." Jin Zuyin nodded and replied, "I will go inside." Since he couldn't use his fire inside the building, he planned to kill them with his longsword. But before he could open the door, Zhao Lijai stopped him and said, "No need to open the door." Jin Zuyin was confused by her words. Without opening the door, how could they kill the zombies? As he looked at her, Zhao Lijai opened her palm and created 5 ice needles. The needles were thin and small, with a flick of her wrist. They shot through the small gaps in the door panel and entered the room. Standing outside, she clenched her fist, and the ice needles merged into one before transforming into a water blade. Slash, slash, slash. The water blade beheaded the zombies easily. Compared to the zombies roaming outside, the ones in this room were only at level 0. In less than 3 minutes, she had killed them all. When she was done, Jin Zuyin melted the lock and opened the door. He sent a wisp of black flame that engulfed the corpses, controlling it so that it only enveloped the zombies without spreading. Although he avoided triggering the fire alarm, it still took him 10 minutes to reduce all the corpses to black ashes. When they were done, they continued to check their surroundings. Seeing tools in another room, Zhao Lijai collected everything into her space. They didn't find any more zombies and cleared out the first underground floor, so they took the elevator to the second underground level. This time, the situation was vastly different from before. Before the door even opened, they could already hear the roars of zombies and smell the rotten stench in the air. Taking out their weapons, they waited with narrowed eyes. Ding! It's raw! The moment the doors opened, 3 zombies pounced at them. Duog crack slash. Jin Zuyin kicked the nearest zombie in the chest, sending it flying. At the same time, Zhao Lijai swung her dagger and cut off 2 zombies' heads in one smooth motion. When they raised their gazes, surprise flashed in their eyes. Chapter 155, Rescue 2. In front of Jin Zuyin and Zhao Lijai, the corridor was packed with zombies. The walls and floor were smeared with black and dried blood. It's raw! Their surprise only lasted for a second before the zombies rushed toward them. Seeing the incoming sharp claws, Zhao Lijai waved her hand and 2 water blades shot forward at high speed. Slash, slash, slash. As the water blades cut through the zombies, Jin Zuyin saw the opening and rushed out as he swung his longsword. The zombies were packed so tightly that with every slash, several were killed. With black flames enveloping his longsword, any zombie his blade touched ignited and turned to ash. While he fought at the front, Zhao Lijai covered his back and blind spots. Standing 2 meters behind him, she had a clear view of the battle situation. She used her water blades to kill the zombies attacking Jin Zuyan's back or sides. The two of them cooperated seamlessly, cutting down zombies with ease. Inside a room at the end of the corridor, a group of people heard the commotion outside. Their faces were pale, their cheeks sunken, and their lips cracked. They hadn't eaten in 5 days and hadn't had a sip of water for almost 3 days. At this moment, their bodies were so weak that they could only lie on the ground, conserving what little energy they had left to hold onto their last breaths. Their dull eyes slowly regained their light as they heard the sounds of fighting outside. One of them forced himself to open his eyes, turned his head to the woman beside him, and said hoarsely, "Wife, someone is here." When he saw his wife lying beside him, unmoving, he reached out and weakly pulled at her fingers. "Wife, don't sleep. Someone is here, we will survive," he said as his eyes slowly turned red. He could feel his wife's cold fingers and had a guess in his heart, but he was unwilling to accept it. Half an hour ago, his wife had still told him to hold on, so she would definitely hold on and keep her word. Beside him, 2 more people opened their eyes. As for the rest, they just lay on the cold ground with their eyes closed. No one knew if they were still alive or not. The man looked at the door, hoping that whoever was coming would be able to open it. After locking the door, they had hidden in this room for more than a week. Now, they didn't even have the energy to move, let alone open the door. 5 minutes later, he saw the lock slowly melting, and hope ignited in his eyes. A moment later, the door opened, and he saw a man and a woman. Jin Zuyan and Zhao Lijai were shocked when they saw a group of people in laboratory coats lying on the ground. Judging from their condition, some of them had died, probably from starvation or dehydration. They entered the room and saw a man raising his thin arm. Seeing this, Zhao Lijai walked toward him and took a bottle of water out of her pocket. She opened the lid and fed him some water before asking, "Comrade, can you hear me?" The man swallowed the water before nodding and saying, "Please, save my wife." Zhao Lijai saw him holding onto the woman beside him. Reaching out, she checked her pulse but found nothing. She thought the woman had died, but before she let go of her wrist, she felt a pulse. Although it was slow and fleeting, she clearly felt the weak throbbing under her fingers. Without wasting time, she fed her pond water and transferred her energy to the woman. As her energy entered the woman's body, she could detect the faint life force still lingering. As she worked to save the woman, Jin Zuyan did the same for the other survivors. Unlike Zhao Lijai's gentle water-type energy, his fire-type energy was more domineering. Ugh! The moment he transferred his energy to them, they felt burning pain spreading throughout their bodies and let out low groans. Though the process was painful, their bodies recovered faster. When he finished pulling several people back from the brink of death, Zhao Lijai finally finished saving the woman. A moment later, the woman opened her eyes and looked at her husband in a daze. She parted her pale lips and said, "Husband, did you die too?" Hearing his wife's words, the man smiled with teary eyes and replied, "Wife, both of us are alive." Zhao Lijai let out a sigh of relief when she saw them finally regain some energy. It wasn't that she had suddenly developed a saint's heart or found her conscience to save others. She only saved them because they might become valuable assets for Jin Zuyan's base. With this group of researchers, even if they couldn't produce rare medicines, they could at least be able to recreate medicines to treat common illnesses. This would help them a lot when recruiting ordinary people to build the base. They checked the rest of the group with heavy hearts. Out of 23 people, only 7 survived. The rest had either long died or had just died. Jin Zuyan carried their cold bodies outside and burned them, while Zhao Lijai took out her backpack from her space outside. When she entered the room, she was carrying a backpack full of food and water. No one had any doubts and only thought that she had left her backpack outside the room when she entered. Opening her backpack, she took out several cartons of banana milk and handed them to the survivors while saying, "Drink some milk first before you eat something." Everyone was grateful for her generosity and accepted the milk. They quickly opened the lids and finished it. The milk was fresh and didn't have much sugar. After drinking it, they felt the burning pain in their stomachs lessen. Chapter 156, New Members, 1. While they drank the milk, Zhao Lijai took out several loaves of bread. These were the last loaves she had in her space. After they finished them, there would be no more fresh bread for her. She couldn't take out too much food for them in order to avoid suspicion. So after giving them a loaf of bread each, she gave them a bottle of pond water. As the survivors ate, she looked at the thin man and asked, "Comrade, are you researchers of this laboratory?" A thin man nodded and said, "Comrade, thank you for saving our lives. After being trapped here for more than a week, we thought we would have to die." Zhao Lijai looked at them and asked, "Comrade, do you have any plans after leaving this place?" They looked at each other and saw the helplessness in each other's eyes. Not to mention their current situation, even before the apocalypse, they had been a bunch of nerds who had no time to exercise. So even if they left this place, it was still a question of whether they could survive outside with their meager strength. Noticing their concerns, Zhao Lijai asked again, "If you don't have any place you want to go, how about joining my team?" "Comrade, are you a soldier?" a woman asked. "No, my team is a mercenary team. We came here to collect supplies and along the way kill zombies. It's also fate that we met as we found this place accidentally," Zhao Lijai replied. Her speech was unhurried and her eyes were clear. When they looked into her eyes, they felt that they could trust her. So after a moment of hesitation, the woman looked at her husband and said, "Husband, let's go with them." The young man only had his wife as his family, so he didn't object. He nodded and said, "Wife, you can make the decision. I will follow wherever you go." The woman nodded, looked at Zhao Lijai and said, "Comrade, we are willing to join your team. My name is Jiang Lixin, and this is my husband, Chen Ji." "My name is Zhao Lijai." Just after she introduced herself, Jin Zuyan walked into the room and said, "Aitg, the area is clear. After they finish their food, we can leave." Jiang Lixin noticed the intimacy in his tone, looked at Zhao Lijai and asked, "This is?" Zhao Lijai smiled and said without hesitation, "Sister Jiang, this is my boyfriend, Jin Zuyan. He is also the captain of our team." When they heard her words, Jiang Lixin and her husband greeted him, "Hello, Captain." Standing up, Zhao Lijai pulled at Jin Zuyan's hand and informed him, "Brother Yan, these are Sister Jiang Lixin and her husband, Brother Chen Ji. They will join our team. The two of them are researchers. With them joining our team, we won't have to worry about lacking talent in medical research," she added meaningfully. Jin Zuyan understood her intentions in inviting them and nodded. He looked at them and said, "Welcome to the team." When the rest of the researchers heard their conversation, a young man asked, "Comrade, can I also join your team? Although I'm still an undergraduate, I studied under my professor for years. I can help with the experiments and laboratory work." Hearing his words, others also asked to join their team. Rather than going outside and trying to survive by themselves, it was safer to join a team. From how this couple killed the zombies outside, they knew that these two were strong. Following them would ensure their safety, and at the very least, they wouldn't have to starve, even if they couldn't have a full meal. Zhao Lijai was delighted when she heard their words. She looked at Jin Zuyan and hinted for him to accept them. Seeing how she kept winking at him, Jin Zuyan chuckled and said, "Everyone, welcome to the Phantom team." Hearing his agreement, they were delighted and said, "Thank you, Captain." After they finished their meal and rested for a while, they left the laboratory together. Since they couldn't run or walk fast, Zhao Lijai and Jin Zuyan could only slow down their pace. When they returned to the warehouse area, it was already noon. Seeing that his captain had finally returned, Xirokai walked over and said, "Captain, we have finished collecting the medicine." Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "Xirokai, bring them to rest on the side. When Zhang Yuan and the rest return, we will go to the last factory." "Yes, Captain," Xirokai nodded and went to complete his tasks. Feng Yun also went to help Xirokai when he saw the group of weak people. While they were busy settling the new members down, Jin Zuyan and Zhao Lijai went to collect the rest of the medicine in the warehouse. At first, they thought that the medicine produced by this factory was common medicine used daily. Unexpectedly, they found a wide range of medicines used mostly in hospitals. There were anesthetics, which included inhalational medicine, injectable medicine, local anesthetics, and preoperative medication and sedation for short-term procedures. There was even oxygen stored in the warehouse. Besides anesthetics, they also found anti-inflammatory medicine, such as acetylsalicylic acid, ibuprofen and paracetamol, opioid analgesics, and medicine for other common symptoms in palliative care in another warehouse. When they went to the next warehouses, they found anti-allergic medicines, antidotes for poisonings, anticonvulsant medicines, anthelmintic medicines, antibacterial medicines, antifungal medicines, antiviral medicines, and antiprotozoal medicines. They even found antimigraine medicines, condoms, and various medicines that they didn't know the usage or purpose of inside the rest of the warehouses. Even though she didn't know the function of these medicines, Zhao Lijai still collected everything stored in the warehouse into her space, including the raw ingredients. After they were done, they heard the sound of people chatting outside. The moment they left the warehouse, they saw that Zhang Yuan had already returned with a huge group of survivors. Chapter 157, New Members 2. Zhang Yuan walked to Jin Zuyan and reported, "Captain, we found a total of 618 survivors and have cleared out the zombies." Jin Zuyan nodded and said, "We are going to the next factory, so we can't bring them. Give them enough supplies for 2 weeks and let them go find Old Wei." When Zhang Yuan heard his words, he laughed and replied, "Okay." While their team and the Eagle team were rivals, they always respected Wei Wying. Despite him looking honest, his belly was actually full of bad ideas. Even if it would be troublesome to manage so many survivors, they believed that with Wei Wying's shrewdness, he would be able to use them to his advantage. He would also ensure that the survivors wouldn't starve to death. After a brief conversation, Zhang Yuan went to manage the survivors. 2 hours later, the survivors had left. Checking his watch, Jin Zuyan said, "Let's have lunch first before we go to the last factory." The team members were famished and agreed readily. They found a place under the shade and built 3 campfires. Xirokai took out 3 iron pots, 2 medium-sized metal basins, and ingredients for lunch from his space. Zhao Lijai filled up the basins and the iron pots with water. 2 pots were used to boil drinking water, while another pot was used to cook bone soup noodles. Since she couldn't cook, Zhao Lijai was tasked with washing the vegetables and preparing the ingredients with Feng Yun, Yin Yusheng, and Li Sikai. As for the noodles, they were left to Jin Zuyan and Qin Luzi. The 2 of them kneaded the dough with practiced movements. They only wore their t-shirts due to the hot temperature. Whenever they needed, their muscles tightened, showing their strength. Zhao Lijai was someone who appreciated beauty, so when she saw this scene, her eyes were glued to them. Although Qin Luzi looked paler than Jin Zuyan, he unexpectedly had tight muscles despite his lean arms. The veins on his arms and the backs of his hands added a masculine aura to his cold, yet gentle features. While she was enjoying the beautiful scenery, Jin Zuyan was staring at her. The longer she stared at Qin Luzi, the colder Jin Zuyan's gaze became. Noticing the coldness emitting from their captain, Feng Yun bumped Zhao Lijai's arm and said, "Junior sister, stop staring at my mentor. Your man almost bore a hole in your face with his gaze, and you still dare to stare at another man." Being bumped by him, Zhao Lijai came back to her senses. The moment she moved her gaze, she met Jin Zuyan's cold stare. Instead of feeling guilty, she smiled sweetly at him and said, "Brother Yan, I want my noodles a little bit chewy." When Feng Yun heard her request, he raised his eyebrows. As a man, he understood another man. When men were jealous, they would ignore their girlfriends' small requests and wait for their girls to coax them. Their captain was clearly jealous, yet she still dared to make a request. It seemed that this junior of his was either a fool in the romantic field, or she was just courageous and dared to pull at the tiger's whiskers. He had already guessed that she would be ignored by Jin Zuyan. Unexpectedly, Jin Zuyan only hesitated for a moment and replied unhappily, "Okay." Feng Yun was dumbfounded by his captain's reaction. He looked at him with disbelief and finally recalled Luo Jing's words, "When a man falls in love, he will have no bottom line toward his woman." Now, he could understand why his friend had told him this. He shook his head and continued washing the vegetables and peeling the garlic. While they were preparing lunch, the group of researchers watched them in shock. They had an intuition that this team was strong, but they never expected them to be this strong. They had witnessed and experienced the so-called living hell when most people turned into zombies, so they knew how hard it was to go out and find supplies. Not to mention having 3 meals a day, it would be a blessing to be able to eat once a day. But this team, not only could they find so many supplies, they even had the leisure to cook hot meals. Seeing this, Chen Ji held his wife's hand and said softly, "Wife, it's still you who knows how to judge people. Your decision to join them was very wise." Jiang Lixin smiled and replied, "Husband, I decided to join them not only because they are strong, but because they saved our lives. From this, we can see that they have their bottom lines and are not a cold-blooded team." I just don't understand why they agreed to let us join them. We are weak and can't help with anything, Chen Ji said. Jiang Lixin looked at her husband and said, Husband, everyone has their roles in this world, even if we are weak and can't fight the zombies. We have our strength in the medical field. As long as we have value, there will always be a place for us in this team, so we must do our best to contribute to this team. This way, we will be able to ensure our safety and have hope for the future, she added solemnly. The moment he heard his wife's words, Chen Ji recalled how they were tricked and betrayed by their friends and colleagues. If not for them, they wouldn't have been trapped in that place and almost starved to death. He doesn't know if those people are still alive, but if he sees them one day, he will definitely repay them tenfold. 2 hours later, the Phantom team finished their lunch and were already on their way to the next factory. They had killed 2 zombie hordes, so the number of wandering zombies in the factory was small. When they reached the military rations factory, Zyro Kai took out several blades from his space and handed them to their new members.
Hello.